Hey everyone, my name is Eric Jones, better known as the Turf Teacher. Welcome to the course entitled Leaf Chewers and Sap Suckers of Plants. This course has been approved by the North Carolina Landscape Contractors Licensing Board for one landscape or one technical credit, whichever you prefer. It is the L category for it, not the B. So you're picking up a landscape or technical credit. This course is not approved by the North Carolina Irrigation Contractors Licensing Board due to its content based on the insects that feed on our plant material. This course is also not approved for online CEUs for your pesticide license. I only teach face-to-face, meaning live seminars or live webinars for pesticide credits. But you are getting one L or one technical landscape contractor credit, and it has been giving course number 2685 by the NCLCLB. So sit back, relax. This is a long presentation. We're going to look at about 82 slides, and we've got some good pictures of these insects. And don't forget to take your 10-question quiz at the end of the lecture, and that way it will generate your proof of attendance, and you can download that and submit it for credit. So, guys, let's go ahead and get started with leaf chewers to begin with, and we are going to talk about slugs, snails, grasshoppers, and some other pests that we may see in our landscape or our garden. Now, with these slugs and these snails, kind of a gross animal, to be honest with you. You're not going to see them much at all during the day. You are going to see them at night because that's when they're going to come out and feed. They belong to the phylum Gastropod, and they're very closely related to clams and mussels. Doesn't do me no good. I know a lot of people eat snails and stuff, for the high dollar appetizers, but it would probably kill me because I'm not going to be able to eat clams or mussels or any type of shellfish or anything in that family, just to the allergies that I have. So it's very unfortunate. But because I do like the taste, I just can't eat it. But you know what? These critters, when we do see them come out, I see them all the time on a rainy night. Reminds me of the Eddie Rabbit song. They love a rainy night, don't they? Because you're going to see them on your patios, you're going to see them on your decks. I've even seen them crawling up, especially the slugs, where they'll be up on my windows. Or even my patio door. That's where they're going to be. They're coming out to feed. They like the rain. They are feeding at night, and they don't like those hot, sunny areas because it's going to dry them out. Now, knowing that we see these guys, maybe we don't see them, but they are going to leave a trail. So they are going to help us identify which ones are there. As you can see here on the bottom left picture with the slug, it's leaving that almost translucent jelly, sticky type material. They do this when they walk on their foot or their feet. And then you see the snail, even though it's in its shell right here, it is moving along, and it's got more of a white color to that slime that they are leaving behind. It helps us identify which ones are, coming to our back door on that rainy night. Now, with the milky garden slug, these guys feed almost anything. They'll eat anything, but they have their favorites, just like us, right? They love their lettuce, beans, corn, and hosta. The damage that they cause are going to be irregular because they rasp the leaf surface with their teeth. It's not going to be these pretty round circles or anything. It is a rasp like. And as you can see here on the bottom right picture of a hosta leaf, the irregular shapes of how they're munching down on one of their favorite meals. Now, we also have brown garden slugs. They're going to feed on boxwoods. They're going to feed on roses, hibiscus, peach trees, magnolias, and anything citrus. And as you can see one here, they have munched on the right side of that leaf and feeding on it. And, he's just taking a little breather right there. But, nonetheless, cute little creature, hanging out there on the leaf. They will go back in that shell for protection or whatever, but they are going to damage some of our more favorite trees and shrubs that we have in our landscape and gardens. Now, with grasshoppers, look at these fine looking fellas. And to be honest with you, grasshoppers are not that big of a problem. They're not. I always thought they were until I got into studying horticulture, as a little guy growing up, we'd, try to catch these things in the backyard, try to go fishing with them, did a lot of boy stuff with them. But you know what? They're not that bad. But there are over 550 species of grasshoppers in North America, and very few are actually, like I said, a garden pest. The grasshoppers that are garden pests prefer to eat leafy vegetables. Now, as you can see here, we have 4 of them. The top left-hand corner is the 2-striped grasshopper. And as you can see right there, if you can follow my mouse around, you can see those 2 stripes right there coming down. But they're going to eat your garden plants. In the upper right is the differential grasshopper. Notice the yellow crosshatch pattern on the femur. That's how we can distinguish it, right? It's got that bright yellow and black. Let's call it my favorite basketball team that got knocked out of the tournament this year. The NIT. They didn't make the NCAA, but Wake Forest. That black and gold color to it. Now, also, we are seeing the migratory grasshopper, which is here on the bottom left. And we have the bottom right is the red-legged grasshopper. And notice both the femur and the tibia are that bright red color. Now, get this, damage from grasshoppers is primarily going to be damage to our leaves on the plants from chewing. It's done on the leaves, but you may also see some fruit or twigs that get damaged by the grasshoppers. And as you can see, we have which one right there? We have, remember, we called it the actual Demon Deacon one. This is our differential grasshopper that is munching away here on a leaf. Now, like I said, this is a long course, 82 slides, but we're jumping into it. We're on slide 7 already. And we're looking at these pictures, and we're going to jump into another section of leaf chewers. So this course is divided up into segments for you. So if you need to pause and, use the restroom or come back to it, you've got plenty of time to do that. And so these other orthopteran or orthopeteran insects, is going to consist of crickets. I love hearing crickets sing at night. And then we have the Jerusalem cricket. And, this guy here in the middle can get pretty big. Probably one of the largest insects that we're going to see in the landscape or the garden. And a lot of people freak out when they see them. But they are not considered pests. They're not. They're actually doing the environment good. They're turning up the soil and doing all kinds of good things. And there's even a Facebook post going around that I've seen recently about the Jerusalem cricket saying, please don't kill me. I actually benefit your garden and your landscape. It's almost like, the opossum. People want to get rid of it, but it does so much good for us that, and just by the looks of it, people are a little intimidated and a little scared of it. But then even the katydids, are not considered pest either. So these 3 guys right here, leave them be. They're not doing any damage. And I love this picture on the right here. It almost looks like a leaf itself, don't it? It's disguising itself in how animals can use, the color of their surroundings and actually blend in. They do that a lot better than our military, right? Sometimes their camouflage is much better than what we wore in the Army. Now, with our earwigs, especially the European earwigs, they eat plants and animals. So they love their meats and vegetables. They're going to feed at night, and they are going to find a place to crawl into during the day and just kind of hang out. They're going to feed on flower blossoms, corn silks, and other tender seedlings. Trying to think, is there anything else that I want to say about that? So, guys, like I say, hanging out during the daytime, if you were to pick up, your trash can or a rock or anything like that, this is where you're going to see these guys hanging out during the daytime. Now, with our ants have a wide range in habits. Some ants eat other insects, others, just going to feed on plants. But ants that eat honeydew work together to protect the insects that make the honeydew from potential predators. As you all know, if you have aphids as an insect problem, you're going to have ants right behind them because they're going to be eating that honeydew, and they are going to protect these aphids because they want that honeydew. They're gonna team up and protect them. Some ants will feed on plants, and others cause damage just from the tunneling and other activities that they are, doing on the plant materials. And our leafcutter ants will damage a variety of plants. They can cause significant foliage loss in addition to removing the buds of the plants. And as you can see here, attacking another insect. Here, they are protecting the aphids from the ladybug because the ladybugs are predators of aphids. And then here, they're chewing off a plant and taking it back to the nest to actually have inside their nest. With the red imported fire ant, and luckily here, I'm in Winston-Salem, guys, and we don't have that many problems on any of our job sites. And I know a lot of you guys that take our Turf Talk Tuesday class and webinar Wednesdays, we discuss a lot with fire ants and what it is that you guys are doing to protect your clients' properties and, their investment that they're making in their landscape. These guys can get mean, right? They primarily feed on insects, and the damage to the plants is a result of them tunneling in the plant. Basically, they're going after their other food source, and they're tearing up the plants from that. The buds, pods, and fruits may occasionally be damaged as well, and they are very aggressive in defending their nests, and they can sting you by using their ovipositor. With the leaf cutter bee, ladies and gentlemen, the leafcutter bee and ants, remember, are in the same family. They are. It's because they all have that waste, which puts them in that group. They are solitary bees. The female will raise her young, and they do not produce colonies. The leafcutter bee lines their nest with pieces of the leaf, so they're gonna chew it off, as you can see here in the picture, and she's going to line her nest with those leaves. They prefer broadleaf plants such as roses, ash, lilac, Virginia creeper, and even redbud. Damage from this leafcutter bee is usually cosmetic unless there is significant foliage loss. So they can take quite a few on it. But remember, these guys are pollinators. So they are beneficial to the environment. They may just go after some of these plants right here. And so it is a catch-22, right? A lot of things that are beneficial to us may harm some other stuff, but that's the way it is. Everything has to eat and survive. With our sawflies, they are another insect of the same order that we just talked about, right? They feed directly on plant leaves. They are also important pollinators. The larvae of the sawfly are very similar to caterpillars. However, we can distinguish them, as we've talked about in other presentations that I've done. They are distinguished by having 6 to 8 pair of crow legs that are not tipped with crochet as the caterpillars would be. And there are two main families that we are dealing with when we're talking about sawflies. That is the conifer sawfly and the common sawfly. Looking to see if there's anything else I want to say about these guys. So we will talk a little bit about the conifer sawfly. They feed on the leaves of conifers. That's why they are called the conifer sawfly. The larvae have defensive behavior of twitching and disgorging of fluid when disturbed. And then the common sawfly feed on a variety of broadleaf evergreens. And as you can see on this plant here, the leaf is being defoliated except for the main veins that are coming off of the leaf. So these guys are going to town on it, and they're leaving those main veins of the leaf. With our bag and web worms, nasty stuff here. The caterpillars will chew the foliage, which can lead to significant damage with defoliation. The types of bagworms that we will see will be the mimosa, juniper, cotoneaster, ugly nest caterpillar, pine webworms, garden webworms, that are going, have the cabbage and the celery, and then our sod web worms. Let's see. We are looking at the cabbage webworm here and the mimosa webworm. Each one of these worms, guys, are related to specific plants, and they use that plant material in creating the bag that they are actually living in. So they are host specific. They're going to go after these certain plants and then make their nest out of it. All right. So that finishes up the first group of leaf chewers that we wanted to talk about. Now we're going to jump into some beetles. And the first one that we want to look at is the blister beetle. These beetles get their names from an offensive oil that they secrete. So I do believe this is a quiz question right here in the 10-question quiz at the end. The type that you find in your garden have very low amounts of this oil and are not likely to cause harm to you. They do prefer legumes, but will feed on a variety of crops. Only the adults will cause plant damage from feeding. Large numbers can rapidly defoliate a plant, and they have irregular fecal spots on the leaves and stems. And a lot of the insect damage that we can see, or how we can help identify these insects, is by their fecal matter. Now, guys, you've heard me say this multiple times over and over again. The number one reason that we do have a pesticide failure is misidentifying the pest. And if we don't see these pests, like here, we got 3 great pictures of beetles, right? So we can identify that. And if we don't know what that is, we can, definitely send it off, or get one of our ag extension agents to help, or, one of the universities that can help with that. And I'm sure there's an app. I haven't downloaded it or even tried to find it, like they are for plant materials, where you can take a picture of these guys and actually identify them. That is a good resource. So you got to correctly identify the pest and then find out the biology of the insect. Which phase or which stage of development is better to have control with the pesticide. So identify it first, then study the biology, and then make the application. Here, the larvae will feed on the egg pods of grasshoppers. So they are predatory for that. The eggs are laid in depressions on the ground, and the larvae dig to the grasshopper eggs. So they are going to eat that. Now, remember, the grasshoppers are not a big of a problem as we probably thought for our landscapes and for our gardens. There's really 4 main ones that we're having to worry about. Now, with the leaf beetle, it is one of the largest insect families in North America. All species will feed on both plants, both in adults and larval stages. So the babies and the big guys are going to eat it. Many species are brightly colored, and then the larvae have dark heads and legs. Now here we have a picture of an elm leaf beetle. Feeds primarily on elms. The adults will chew circular holes in the leaf, as you can see right there. And then the larvae can skeletonize the lower leaf surface, which means, as you can see here, we've got the adult here on the left, the larvae on the right, but that skeletonization is either on one side of it. And so basically it is creating a translucent leaf. They're eating the underside. Typically it is the underside, but sometimes, or other larvae may be on top, but it's making that leaf transparent by eating just that underside. There's still a little film right there that you can see through, but they are making it look almost like, a skeleton. Other leaf beetles, We have the large elm leaf beetle, the viburnum leaf beetle, the imported willow leaf beetle, the cottonwood leaf beetle, the coreopsis beetle, and then the strawberry root worm. And I don't want to hear anything that is affecting strawberries. Um, to the right there is the striped beetle. Trying to think of anything else I want to say here. Now let's jump on to our Colorado potato beetle. The most important potato pest worldwide. Just a bad thing. You see damage primarily on potatoes, but will feed on other nightshades. Both the adult and the larvae will feed on the foliage. Adults create notching wounds, while the larvae will create ragged injuries and produce large amounts of excrement on the foliage. Plants can tolerate about 25 to 30% defoliation as a tolerance limit. Once that happens, you're probably, you've reached that threshold, and, whether or not a pesticide application would render beneficial or not, that would, go back to the whole principle of IPM when you determine your thresholds, and then, your economic injury level on your crops. And here we have the pictures of the Colorado potato beetle. Now, the one thing I want you to know is what it looks like here. It's very pretty. It's very shiny. Almost looks like a piece of hard rock candy. The Christmas candy that we get in the bags. It almost looks like that. But the brightly colored beetle on the top. To the right is the larvae stage of the beetle, and then under the left are the eggs. And notice the eggs. The eggs aren't laying flat. They're almost standing up. And or they're actually, standing up on end is what we would call them. So they're long oval shaped legs. And most of the eggs that we see on a leaf, are going to be laying flat. So that can actually help us identify, which beetle or which insect this is actually coming from. Tortoise beetle. There are a variety of tortoise beetles that feed on morning glory, sweet potato, and other related plants. Both the adult and larvae feed on the foliage, and damage is usually insignificant. Here, the actual larva actually looks like a mealybud, but it's yellow, right? So pretty neat looking. The miscellaneous leaf beetle, we have the red turnip beetle, the yellow margin leaf beetle, the sweet potato leaf beetle. Most damage is caused by the larvae. And then we have the bean leaf beetle. Larvae develop on the roots but cause little damage, and damage is caused by the feeding adult. With the striped cucumber beetle, they eat a wide variety of vegetable, but prefer, the cucurbits or cucurbits. I need to practice my Latin. I will have to say that. But they are wanting, things in like the cucumber family. Adults will feed on the seedlings, which can retard the growth or kill it. Later, they can be found in flowers of squash or melons and can actually pit the fruit. Um, Adults can transmit the disease producing bacterial wilt in these plants, and then they will also, help aid in the cucumber mosaic virus. They will help bring that on. The larvae, when feeding on the roots, cause little damage, but they may move into the rind of the fruit on the ground. Now, again, look how beautiful this animal is. That red and black stripes. So, very, very identifiable, just based on the colors, guys. Thinking. again, like I said, adults will transmit that cucumber mosaic virus. All right, now our spotted cucumber beetle. Similar to the one we just saw, right? The striped one. But here it is, it's spotted. Same colors though. Most of the damage is done by adults who feed on a wide range of plants, mostly the cucurbits and the corn, and the larvae may tunnel the roots, which will stunt the actual plant. Flea beetle. Flea beetle are tiny compared to other beetles. The adults are most damaging as they chew little shot hole wounds in the leaves. The flea beetle feed on a variety of vegetable and flower crops, some being plant specific. And if you ever grow an eggplant, then you're probably familiar with the eggplant flea beetle. Here on the left, we have the potato flea beetle, and then on the right is the eggplant flea beetle. And notice the size of the holes of where they're eating. So yes, very tiny compared to other beetles, just based on the damage that they're doing. Mexican bean beetle. A species of lady beetle that feeds on plants rather than as a predator of insects. Feeds primarily on garden beans and field beans. Both adult and larvae will damage the leaves. Adults will chew the leaves, and the larvae skeletonize the underside of a leaf. And again, a really good picture here of the larvae. Where it is skeletonizing. As you can see, it's on the underside of the leaf, and it's making that leaf almost transparent. So it kind of reminds me of like a church window. You're looking through the paint. You're still, there's still some leaf structure there, but they're eating that underside, making it translucent or transparent. And then the adult here, feeding on, eating holes through it. All right, so now we will jump into our caterpillars and others. And so this is a pest that can cause plant injury by chewing. We have our loopers. We have our moth larvae from hornworms. And I'll tell you a cute story about the hornworms when we actually get to it. Moth larvae, the silkworms, your bagworms, and then your swallowtail, and then other butterflies that we will see. And so our loopers or loppers, loopers, probably is the way to say it. They are a type of cutworm with 3 pairs of prolegs. In addition to cabbage, they can be found on potatoes, tomatoes, peas, lettuce, spinach, and they are a pale green darkening as they age with white stripes down their side, and the eggs are attached singly to foliage, as you can see. But nasty little guys right here, and like you said, that identifiable white stripe down it, and just the one egg. And even the adult is a beautiful colored moth. Hornworms. We recognize these large caterpillars by the horn on the hind end, at least in the first stages. As adults, you may recognize this insect as a hummingbird moth. Now, with the hornworm, I would say that we're not going to have a big of infestation as we're expecting this year, because one, when they overwinter, they do not like wet weather, and they kind of like it. They like it dry. They like it dry and cold. And we've had a more of a definitely a wet winter, and we've not really gotten that cold. So I want to see how big of an infestation that we see in our gardens and on our tomato plants. But the one thing about these guys is, I walked into a pet store one day, and they were selling these guys for like 3 for 15. Like I was just like crazy. Like, you're actually selling these things, and people want to get rid of them on their plants. But they are a favorite food of some of these like lizards and geckos and stuff that people are keeping as pets. And so the pet stores are actually, breeding these and selling them. And it's kind of like a delicacy for these type lizards that people have as pets. Um, these guys are also very fond of tomato and tobacco, but will also feed on other nightshades like the pepper and the potato. But definitely, you're going to see them on your tomato plants and tobacco. A lot of the landscapers that actually come to the webinars that we do live or even the face-to-face classes, talk about the hornworm because they raise tobacco. The other moths, walnut caterpillar, prefers walnut, butternut, pecan, and hickory. Eats the entire leaf, starting with skeletonizing the leaf. But just kind of the adult here, just creepy. There's the fully grown walnut caterpillars. Nasty little guys. Silkworms. They feed on a variety of deciduous trees and shrubs. Late season feeding can defoliate but causes little damage because it is late season. And then the royal moth. Adults do not feed and die within a few days. But gorgeous, gorgeous moth there, right? Bagworms, develop in a case covered with debris and leaf fragments. So, they're using leaf debris of, whatever they're hanging in. The female adult is wingless and never leaves the case. The males are winged. Bagworms prefer juniper, cedar, false cypress, and arborvitae. They may also feed on a variety of woody plants. We had a blue Atlas cedar on campus that completely just defoliated two of them. And the trees lived. The horticulture team there on campus, made applications and then pulled a lot of the bags off. But we took the students there, and you could actually, see the actual, the worms inside of the bag. They would move. It was kind of creepy, but you know what? It was a good learning experience. But these guys can devastate these types of plants, but they are treatable and the plant can come back. As you can see here, the bag hanging there, and they will actually move. There they are emerging, but several there. Just a bad thing there on the Leland cypress. Now we'll talk about our swallowtails. And absolutely beautiful. Even, the caterpillar and the butterfly, just absolutely beautiful. Beautiful. There's the parsley worm, feeds primarily on parsley, dill, and fennel. And please keep in mind that just because you see one of these insects does not mean you need to act. We don't have to make an application, guys. Is the damage enough to harm the plant? What time of year is it? How badly is the infestation? And is there an economic factor? And is it causing you to lose money on your crop? Guys, if it's our backyard garden, probably not. What have we lost? Maybe $100 in seeds. And, yeah, we may have lost some time. But a lot of people freak out when they see damage caused by these leaf chewers. It doesn't bother me a bit because the one thing that it does tell me when I see holes in like my lettuce, that means that it's not been sprayed with a pesticide. And so a lot of people are real, leery about having pesticides applied anywhere near their garden, anywhere near their home. Well, if you see garden plants that actually have holes in it or they have bugs on it, it means it's full of life, and it means that there's not been any pesticides applied. And just because you see one of these little guys doesn't mean you need to go get out the spray can, do you? No, actually, hand removing it is one way, is probably one of the best ways to do it. And so now, guys, we're going to go ahead and talk, the second half of this class about our sap suckers. And one of the first ones that we're going to talk about is the white fly. Now, this is often associated with greenhouse and houseplants because these pests are tropical and subtropical. And so, yes, we see it in our greenhouses at the college all the time. The immatures are scale-like and will feed on the plant sap. There is that greenhouse white fly. More than 250 ornamental and vegetable plants can serve as a host for this little guy. These two plants right here are very notorious for having white fly infestations, and that would be the poinsettia and your hibiscus. And damage caused from these sap-sucking immatures will include yellowing, stunting, premature leaf drop, and overall decline. With psyllids, the adults of these jumping plant lice, and I like the fact that they are calling it like lice, but does resemble small cicadas, while the nymphs are flat and scale-like. They are generally host-specific. Damage is from removing sap and injecting their saliva while feeding, and the result is distortion, gall formation, and systemic symptoms. Excrement of the psyllid may be distinctive, sometimes a honeydew, and others secrete a waxy substance in the form of pellets or a stringy wax. Here we have the potato or tomato psyllid. While this particular plant lice will feed on many solanaceous plants, but tomato and potato suffer from injury the most. The saliva is injected while feeding, will disrupt the growth. The condition is commonly psyllid yellows. You'll have slowed plant growth, leaf curling, and color changes. With boxwood psyllids, common in the eastern United States, this pest will produce cupping distortion on American boxwood. The nymphs are covered with threads of wax and will feed on the new leaves in the spring and will overwinter as eggs. And here you can see them actually on the boxwood leaf. And you can see that actual cupping is what they're talking about. That cupping distortion if you zoomed in right there. Aphids, more than 1,300 species of aphids in North America. They can reproduce asexual and are prolific reproducers. During the growing season, females give birth to live daughters. And we're going to see a chart here on the next page, and I want to talk about that because that is a quiz question. Adults can be winged or wingless. They overwinter as eggs produced through sexual reproduction. So remember, they are asexual most of the time, but they overwinter as eggs produced through sexual reproduction. And you can actually see that as we go into that chart on the next slide. Aphids damaged by sucking the sap from the phloem and the honeydew secretions, which can be a nuisance and allow for the growth of sooty mold. Now, a lot of the times we create our aphid problems. And you ask, Eric, what do you mean? Aphids, they need that new herbaceous growth to live, right? And so let's think about our crepe myrtles. Here it is. I'm recording this lecture end of March, for your North Carolina Landscape Contractors credit. And a lot of people have already cut their crepe myrtles back. And when we get that new flush of crepe myrtles, that new flush of growth, aphids are going to be drawn to it. And so that's why you see a lot of crepe myrtles with that black sooty mold on it, is because of the aphids. They're releasing that honeydew. And then you're always going to see ants at the base of your crepe myrtles because these guys are protecting their aphids. And not only is this, aesthetically unpleasing to our clients, it can also be economic, a disaster for us. We got a crepe myrtle growing up on the sidewalk, and these aphids are producing all that honeydew. It drops on our sidewalk, and somebody could be jogging in the neighborhood and slip and fall in it, or it could be on a curb along the street, and somebody parked their car underneath it, and that honeydew drops on the car and can cause a new paint job. So aphids can really, really be a problem, but we need to stop cutting back our plants. that new flush of growth is what draws them near. And they also need the nitrogen, right? And so they're more prevalent, in the springtime when that new flush of growth comes out, and we've fertilized. And so they're getting that dose of nitrogen that they actually need. I feel like personally, we cause more of an aphid problem than they probably would be. Now, so let's talk about this overwintering as an egg. Um, let's see. All right. This is a unique reproduction of aphids. So they can produce asexually, but let's start with the overwintering egg as we see right here. Overwintering egg. They're going to give birth to asexual females, and then the asexual females going to give birth to more daughters. They're just going to keep having it, So we're looking at what, like four generations right there. Well, here, in the autumn time, one of the X's is eliminated. And so we have a sexual female, and then we have a male who's going to produce, the sperm cell, and then the sexual females, ovium, and then they're going to join, and then they're going to overwinter as a sexual egg. So this is the life cycle of these aphids. Here we have the green peach aphid. The winter host for this aphid includes mainly peaches and apricot. The summer host includes more than 200 herbaceous plants, one of the most common damaging aphids of greenhouse crops is this green peach one. Damage from heavy summer feeding can include stunting, wilting, premature leaf drop if severe, and damage from feeding on the winter host in spring includes leaf curling. And that leaf curling is where they, you definitely see that. And, with the Modesto ash tree was a big problem for the Modesto ashes. These aphids would get into it and they would curl these leaves up, and then the honeydew would start dropping out of it. It was just a major, major issue. We talk about that in our integrated pest management class. But damage from the feeding on the winter host and spring leaves includes leaf curling, and there are also vectors of disease, including the potato virus. Now, here we're going to see the aphids on two different plants. Here, damage to the winter host of the peach tree, and then damage to the summer host on your pepper plant. So, aphids are a bad, bad thing. Cotton melon aphid. They feed on a wide range of plants, but are particularly damaging to melon, cucumber, squash, and other related vine crops. They are also found on peppers, eggplant, spinach, asparagus, okra, hibiscus, crepe myrtle, and more. Damage is caused by sap feeding, resulting in wilt, yellowing, in extreme cases, foliage death. Infestation on new growth will cause this curling. They can easily transmit virus, including cucumber mosaic virus, watermelon mosaic virus 2, zucchini yellow mosaic virus, and many have developed resistance to insecticides, making them complicated to manage. They are making sure that their life cycle is going to continue. For one, being able to reproduce asexually. Here we have the cotton melon aphid. In warmer areas, including greenhouse, reproduction is continuous. And like I said, these guys are tiny, right? You can spot them with the eye, if you know what you're looking for and stuff. But the good thing about these guys in a greenhouse setting is that you can use the beneficial insects, such as the ladybug. You're not gonna have to worry about the ants, in a greenhouse, especially if you're treating for that. But you can release these ladybugs that can, go after and eat the aphids, or you can release a beneficial wasp. And these beneficial wasps are actually cool. And how they kill these aphids, if you ever were to look at an aphid underneath a microscope, and if you were to see like a black hole or black dot on the side of an aphid, this is where that beneficial wasp has laid eggs inside of the aphid. And the eggs, have that warm place to live and everything. And once they hatch, they have a readily available food source. They eat the aphid from the inside out. And so, you might ask, what are these beneficial wasps? Guys, the names are way too long. They have no common names, but they are the unsung heroes of what we call biological control, and they can put a hurting on your aphid population. Woolly aphids. These aphids cover themselves with waxy threads, as you can see here. And look, the ant getting that little bit of honeydew, but he is protecting these guys. And the sexual form only produces one overwintering egg. And if you'll see this cotton filament on the leaves where these aphids are. The woolly apple aphids, the host is the apple, crabapple, hawthorn, mountain ash, pyracanthus, and the elms. On the summer hosts, including apple and crabapple, they will colonize the roots, trunk, and branches, mostly in locations of previous wounds. Damage appears as a knot-like growth as the feeding interferes with the plant's normal healing. And we got a great picture of that on the next slide. On the primary elm host, winter new spring growth is curled and stunted from infestations and visible as stunted clusters or rosettes at the end of the twigs. And here is the woolly apple. And here's inside that wound that I was talking about. And it's not going to let the actual, twig there actually heal. Delgids. They are a family of woolly aphids that are associated with conifers and reproduction in all forms from an egg. The hemlock woolly adelge accidentally introduced, and I know this is a quiz question, accidentally introduced in the United States in 1950 from Japan. And this is the most serious insect pest of hemlock in the eastern United States. Damage is from feeding and injecting toxic saliva into the plants. The foliage will yellow, the needles will drop, the limbs will die back, and the trees are often killed. Winter is spent as adults on twigs. Females lay their eggs in March that begin hatching in April. We'll see a chart here in a minute with all that. And then a second generation follows in the summer, going dormant midsummer and resuming back in the fall. And here is the two generations. You have an egg. It's, there mid-March, immature. May becomes, the adult. Then they're going to lay their eggs dormant in hot summer temperatures and then overwinters. Mealybugs are soft body insect covered with a white cottony wax. Citrus mealybugs, plant used in the interior escaping greenhouse plants, are particularly susceptible to mealybugs. Damage is caused by feeding on the sap, weakening the plant. Introduction of saliva causes systemic damage to the plant. They also produce honeydew, which can be unsightly and annoying. And actually, what was some of the beetles that we actually saw? Looks like here the mealybugs, are white, whereas the larvae of some of these beetles look just like the mealybug, but were yellow. Here we have the cochineal or cochineal scale. This scale develops on a prickly pear and some other cactus. They produce cottony masses of wax that covers the mature female and eggs and was used for making a natural dye. Soft scale, one of the largest and most important families of scale insects. The adults are usually attached to twigs and small branches. Immatures usually feed on the leaves or the needles, and they feed on the phloem sap and produce large amounts of honeydew. So again, another insect that is producing this honeydew. Now, again, so that's why you actually have to inspect these plant materials, guys, because these, we've already talked about 3 that is producing honeydew. You need to go and actually do the inspection on site. Brown soft scale, a wide range of plants can be infested with brown scale, most commonly ficus and English ivy. Brown scale is common greenhouse pest and pest of interior plants, and heavy infestation can cause wilting, premature leaf drop, and dieback. Honeydew secretions can be a nuisance. With armored scale, hard scale insects create a hard waxy covering. Most are oval, but some are elongated. Your armored scales usually feed on plant cells rather than the phloem, and they do not excrete honeydew, but may kill all of the plant where they feed, and the result is chlorotic spotting and twig dieback. Euonymus scale, Euonymus species, especially evergreen species, damage caused by sucking the sap. Heavy infestation can kill the branch and actually the whole plant. And you'll see this a lot with Euonymus. You'll see dieback or, big holes or areas where there are no leaves. Now, heavy infestation on this, as you can see right here on that leaf, you can see these little armored scales right here all over it. Leaf hoppers. Small wedge-shaped insect tapering at the end. The adults are winged and have enlarged hind legs and leap from plant to plant. Immatures will hatch from eggs injected under a plant surface near a vein or small twig, and they can move easily with a crab-like walk. There are more than 2,500 species of leaf hoppers in North America, and they are sap suckers, but damage is variable depending on the species. And frequent damage is seen as a white flecking on the leaf, and damage can come from injecting the saliva as well. And here you have the potato leaf hopper, the rose leaf hopper, and the aster leaf hopper. And like I said, that tapering back to the wings there and translucent there towards the end of the wings. Tree hopper. These guys are cool looking. They have an enlarged segment behind their head that extends over their head like a shield, and primarily injure when laying the eggs into the twigs. Very colorful, almost looks like a little miniature sailboat, right? Tree hoppers. Spittlebugs, closely related to leaf hoppers, broader in form. The nymphs produce a mass of spittle when they begin feeding. They suck sap from the xylem, and spittle is produced from excess fluid that's secreted. Not significant damage, but may see some stunting because of it. Squash bugs, most notorious member of the leaf-footed bugs. They have large, prominent heads with piercing, sucking mouthparts, and they prefer winter squash and pumpkins. Adults and nymphs both suck sap from the stems and leaves, causing localized injury that kill and collapse the tissue. Plant bugs. The majority of plant bugs feed on sap, but some are predatory or omnivores. The garden flea hopper that you see here feed on a wide variety of vegetable and other plants, but prefers legumes. Damage is pale yellow spotting at the feeding site, and the feeding can stunt or kill a seedling. Chinch bugs, major turfgrass issue problem. These bugs develop on grasses and are members of the seed bug family. The damage to grass by feeding interferes with the grass's ability to transport water. Damage symptoms are similar to drought and tends to occur in patches. And killed grass is straw-like and does not respond to watering. So one example is if you're in a highly, if you have an irrigated lawn and it's still showing signs of drought, more than likely you've got chinch bug problems. And I know there are some grass seeds that are, encapsulated with like a fungus that will actually kill the chinch bug but not harm the grass. So again, a biological control for them. Stink bugs. And all I can hear is my three little girls. Oh my God, Dad. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's a stink bug. They're petrified of them, and I guess because of the odor. But most species are green or brown and produce an odor when handled. Some have bright colors. The ones that we're seeing around here in North Carolina, just plain gray, right? But damage is primarily to the fruiting part of the plant. Damage is from sucking sap, but there is a localized damage at the feeding site. And then the harlequin bug, most seriously damaging cabbage and mustard grown for greens. Lace bugs, small insect with delicate wings, almost translucent wings. They feed on the underside of leaves, producing spotting that is visible on the leaf surface. The azalea lace bug, the most damaging lace bug associated with landscape plants and severe injury to the azalea foliage. Again, like that transparent wing that it has. Thrips. Thrips have a single mandula used to puncture leaf tissue. The maxilla penetrates the interior cells, and the thrips suck up the fluids from the tissue. Injury looks like slivery or silvery scars. They are also leave small varnish fecal droppings. Spider mites, they will pierce the outer layer of the plant tissue and feed on the juices. Damage appears as stippling, which reduces the vigor of plants. The spider mites are tiny and difficult to see without a lens, and a multitude of colors that you'll see these guys in. Two-spotted spider mite. This spider mite has the widest host range of any spider mite in the world. It is the most common mite pest of houseplants. Damage appears as stippling, generalized bronzing, reddish discoloration, and they show high resistance to pesticide, making them hard to manage. You can see the two-spot there. Spruce spider mite. This cool season mite is a common problem with Fraser fir trees. They can damage trees throughout the growing season. And so, spider mites, guys, they are, there's warm season and cool seasons of them, just like there are turf grasses. Feeding causes yellow spots on the needles, and damage can cause significant economic loss. These mites will feed on the dwarf Alberta spruce as well as other conifers, and the spider mite is less active in the heat of the summer. And here is spider mite damage. And so, you do see this, like on the dwarf Alberta spruce, you put in a container, put some Christmas lights around it. Next thing you know, starts losing it, and it is your spruce spider mite. Our tarsinamid mites, a tiny mite, nearly colorless, a wide range of host plants, including herbaceous. Damage is seen as stunting and twisting of new leaves. Other mites, false spider mite, are orange to red with short, stubby legs on a flattened, elongated body. Almost looks like a tick, found on orchids and some trees and shrubs. And then you have the rust mite, microscopic mites. Gets noticed when producing the galls. Most live on the leaf and cause leaf injury that looks like rust or bronzing. And guys, that wraps up leaf chewers and sap suckers of plants, course number 2685. So don't forget, once you've watched the lecture, it's going to mark itself complete. And then you can go and take the 10-question quiz. And once that is completed with a 70 or above, you have 3 chances to take the quiz. And once you score a 70 or above, it's going to generate your proof of attendance. And it should email you the proof of attendance, the website. And or if not, you can download it in your My Certificates in your profile on the website. So anyway, guys, I appreciate it, and I will see you in the next lecture.